fed up with dieting and ready for a lasting lifestyle change? TOPS, Take Off Pounds Sensibly, is a nonprofit group that can help. They meet at the Senior Center every Friday at noon. There's no special food to buy. Learn how real food fits real life, a lifestyle you can live with longer and healthier. Visit tops.org to learn more or call the Senior Center, 520-4945.
A broadcasting outreach of Franklin.
Chris, all set?
Yes.
All set, Amy?
Sure, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Franklin Planning Board. We'll open up the planning board for July 25th, 2022. This will be audio and video recorded as well. And there is a call-in number for Zoom, which is 312-626-6799. And the meeting number is 898-695-77385. I guess we'll go right into general business. Item A would be 76 Grove Street. If Amy from Department of Planning could, so quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll actually defer most of the comments to our town engineer, Mike Maglio, but just kind of a little brief background. This project was approved back on January 23rd, 2008. They submitted a final Form H. Beta, was not even working with the town at that time. I don't even know if we had our previous engineer either, so I was deferring any comments to our engineer to take a look at it. So I'll defer it to Mike.
Mike, if you could give us a quick run through, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we did go back and look. As Amy had mentioned, this project dates back to 2008. So what I had is a recent as-built plan of what's out there now. When I went back and looked at the approved plan and the conditions, and just kind of went through both to see if everything matched up, and just came across a couple of discrepancies, just a couple of points just to bring up. As noted on the as-built plan, there was a proposed trench drain at the corner of the building that wasn't installed, but rather the pavement was graded to the two catch basins at the driveway entrance on Beaver Street. The two catch basins at the location, they are set a little bit lower, and there's a hump at the end of the driveway. So, well, I didn't get the opportunity to see it in any kind of heavy rain, but they do appear that they would work and collect the water before it left the site. So I felt that was they appear to be effective in that sense. Also noticed that there was a proposed oil grit separator that was shown on the plan. That wasn't installed, but what they did do is they installed the water quality manhole, and they installed that downstream of all the catch basins on site. So it actually appears to be working better, providing more water quality treatment on the site. So that was also a good thing. And then the last thing I noticed was on the proposed plan, it did call out to remove about 786 square feet of pavement from the rear of the site, which was to be replaced with 12 to 18 inches of crushed stone. When I was out there, it's shown on the as-built plan too. It appears that existing asphalt wasn't removed. It does look like the footprint of that asphalt area is a little bit smaller than the area that was shown in the original plan, but where it is so old, and it was not really sure why or it was or was not ever removed.
Okay.
So, but that was just those are the observations we had on that.
So basically, this plan's just bringing them up to conformance for the most part. I didn't know if some of the changes were part of the Beaver Street rework. That's why I'm asking. And I don't know if it hinged on that. That's all.
We a couple of years ago, we reworked the intersection a little bit, tightened up the radius, and put that island in there. That was all within the public right of way, though, so that didn't really affect anything on this particular site.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions? Okay.
I'm good.
Through the chair really quickly, so it's to Mike, so you don't think that the replacement of the paved area with crushed stone is gonna negatively impact stormwater management for any reason whatsoever? I mean, to go from impervious surface to pervious seems like it would have been beneficial.
Correct, and it was called out on the plan. It does look like the area is smaller than the area that was called on the plan. I don't know if they removed some of it, but again, the history of this project goes way back. It was before my time. I'm not familiar with what happened during construction or even the approval process. It has been there for quite some time, and we're not aware of any issues from it, but I defer to the board if how they felt on that.
Make a motion to accept the certificate of completion, the Form H.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Go to next, general business would be, Spring Street, the final Form H, the solar. If Amy could give us a run-through.
Sure, thank you,
We'll go to
Mr.
Beta next, if you want.
Yep,
please. Thank you.
Beta is on Zoom, so just to let you know.
Yep.
Yep, so the planning board approved the special permit and site plan for Spring Street Solar on May 20th, 2019. They've submitted a final Form H as well as as-built. Beta was out there, and I think there are just kind of a laundry list of items that could be improved before signing off on a final Form H.
Okay. Matt from Beta, you're there, if you could give us, if you want to just give us a quick rendering of your thoughts for this, so you see pictures in the report.
Okay, sure, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've been making periodic stops at the site over the past couple of years, and it's come quite a long way from where it started. Our most recent stop was several weeks ago. We did do a walk of the site and review the as-built plans. The first thing that we wanted to note is there were a couple of changes that they did out there, most notably adding some stump grindings for berms, for stormwater dissipation. They ended up adding a riprap swale in the interior of the array where they couldn't get some of the site to stabilize, and they actually extended some of the access roads to provide maintenance access around the site. So overall, we think that these, provide improved site stability and the adequate access that they really need to service the site. One other thing that we wanted to bring to the board's attention is that the as-built plan is not a surveyed plan. It's just a red line of the design plans. So we defer to the board if they want to see a full survey, at least of the town roadway, and we'd recommend at the minimum that the stormwater basins and structures are surveyed so the volumes and outlets can be verified. I did receive some correspondence from the contractor today, noting that they are addressing or have addressed several of the things on our list, including removing some of the stockpiles out there. They replaced the accessible parking sign. They're going to spread the gravel that's in the hammerhead area at the front of the site, and they did remove the sandbags from the infiltration basin outlet. I would say the two biggest things out there are utility poles have not been extended down Spring Street yet, and infiltration basin 1, the main basin for the site down at the bottom, needs some maintenance done to it. During the early stages of the projects, the site was unstabilized, and it did get sedimentation in it. It does have some wetland vegetation in there now, so the sedimentation and the vegetation needs to be cleared, bottom scarified, and then replanted in accordance with the approved plans. Just a note for the board that I know there was a concern early on in the project about whether they'd be able to vegetate this site, and I'd say that 90% of the site is well vegetated, including under the array areas. So the contractor did take some special care to make sure that that was done for the board. So that's our general summary, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I got some questions, but I'll go to the board first. Anybody has any questions or comments? The as-built, final as-built, I'd like to see one, considering the size of the site and the amount of work that was done up there. I'd like to see an actual as-built done for the property myself. I think it'd be best for the town as well. Question, has the tree clearing been done along Spring Street for the new bowls?
When I drove by, it looked like they have the trees that they're tagged still, but I didn't see any trees that have been removed recently.
So you think,
It's my understanding that National Grid isn't going to do the work until 2023.
so I guess what I'm leading to, would there be additional work out on Spring Street that these guys are gonna have to do after the bowls are set, or as part of this is what I'm getting to? With the bowls aren't
Yeah, well, they'll
set-
certainly still have to take down the trees. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
and have the pole set, yeah, and connect all the wiring. Yep.
Okay, so I guess I'd just make a recommendation that we do a partial Form H, have them do the as-bills, clean the basins out like you want, and clean up some of the loose ends. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Through the chair, sorry,
Whoop,
to
yeah.
clarify, when you say as-built, you're requiring a full survey of the site?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
My name is Nick Santangelo. With Beals and Thomas, I'm representing the proponent on this project. Just to confirm this as-built, there doesn't appear to be a specific mechanism in either the permit approvals or the town bylaws that require an instrumental as-built survey. And an instrumental as-built survey is an extreme cost specifically for this. Is there any way we can discuss a possible alternative to that? So the project is already going to have an ALTA prepared for it. The ALTA will include the property lines, limits of the fence, tree line, so on and so forth. This is something that the proponent is going to need for financial surety and whatnot. So that'll include a lot of the major features and may also capture the corners of the installed array, gravel road, so on and so forth. A full instrumental on the ground survey is going to be a significant cost that doesn't appear to be verified or backed up by anything. Interested to discussion on that.
It's a board's feeling. I'd like to see at least the extension of the perimeter and all the hardscape and everything, at least, so in the future, the town has something to look at, fire department, police department, DPW, just as reference as well. Mike, your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is one of the comments that Matt had brought up. I think an instrument survey of the detention basin itself, just to verify the volume and that it was built according, with the right capacity that was actually designed. That would be one thing I think should be included. But as far as, locating the individual arrays, I mean, maybe, as you mentioned, maybe just the outside perimeter, make sure they have the offsets for the zoning for the property lines, but I don't think the interior of the site necessarily would be that beneficial.
I was thinking the outside perimeter, so to make sure it lands where it was supposed to.
Correct.
That's my thought.
The interior, I don't think would add a significant benefit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exterior perimeter, just a grid to show it.
I think a lot of the details, Mr. Chairman, on the ALTA plan will
Yeah.
cover a lot of
Okay.
that.
So, yes, do the exterior perimeter of the array, and then do the detention basins and all the things that Beta was looking for. Okay, so we'll continue this, but we'll give a partial release for tonight. So I make a motion to give partial release to the Spring Street Solar. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next under general business would be for 206 Grove Street, another final Form H. If I can go to Amy at Department of Planning, just for a quick review.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have, the planning board approved this back on July 13th, 2020. They have been before us for a final Form H. And there was a couple things that the board was looking them to kind of wrap up before there was going to be a final Form H issued. One of them was the railings on the loading ramp, which they have been installed. And the other one was to verify the gas trap was installed. I did include an email from the applicant that they have confirmed that these items were done, and I believe David's been out there as well.
Yep. Okay. Anybody on the board have any question or comment? I went through there, it looks good, so they put the rails up and everything. So I make a motion to accept the final Form H for 206 Grove Street. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next order of business would be the field change for the flex space on Washington Street, 275.
Oh, I have,
Amy, if we can go to the
have that
Department of
over there
Planning
too.
first.
I'll take it.
um,
Do you want that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really going to defer a lot of these. They were field changes that were made as they were starting to do the site work and constructing the site. I believe that Beta came to attention Beta, and we've discussed with the town engineer Mike that there was a couple feet of offset on where the buildings were going to be located, and they decided that the board needs to determine if this is an acceptable field change.
Rick, if you want to introduce yourself, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Goodrow with United Consultants. Now that I'm going to turn the plan right side up. What had happened was when the applicants moved forward and purchased the building, they determined that the building size actually was going to be 1 foot 4 inches larger on all 4 sides, for a total of 2 foot 8 inches increased in the depth of the building and the length of the building. Buildings have not been constructed yet, so what we had done was we overlaid on this plan what those changes would result in. So basically, this corner and this corner of the 3 buildings maintain the same location. The rear of the buildings, again, maintain the same distance from the abutting properties. The buildings were increased 2 foot 8 inches to the west, and the space between the buildings was reduced from 40 feet to 36 feet. Those are the major changes. We have provided you with a summary of the changes. I can say that all of the impervious roof was on areas that were previously bituminous concrete, and with the reduction of the pavement from 40 feet to 36 feet, there's a small change of about 200 square feet of impervious on the entire site. I did forward the plan to Deputy Chief Barbieri, and he was happy. His comment was just to confirm that the 2 fire hydrants that originally were proposed are still part of the project. So we did do that. We also had looked at some of the parking changes that would be brought about with this change to the building area. So the buildings were made approximately 900 square feet larger, and basically we had previously had 38,205 square feet of area being utilized for warehouse, and now we've increased that to 40,725. That would increase our parking space demand by 2 spaces under that scenario. We had also looked at the site as an industrial use, which required us to have 6 additional parking spaces with the additional square footage. So that would bring us up to 131 spaces, which would be the larger of the 2 ways that we had evaluated that previously. And the site still has the 144 spaces. So we do have some excess parking to absorb the increase to the building. Thank you.
I guess we'll go to Beta first, if Matt did this. Matt, you there?
No, you got
Gary did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I think,
Gary.
Greg, you got me.
Sorry, Gary, I forgot you did this one. I wrote it on my paper, but not that one. So Gary, if you
Oh,
could
that's all right.
give us some of your thoughts with the changes here?
Yeah, this is, it's pretty simple. Like Rick said, I came up with the same conclusion. I think they finally bought a building, it was just a little bit larger, but what they did do is they absorbed a little bit of the travel lane, but it's still quite wide. I believe it's 27 feet at its thinnest. I had asked, part of the comments that I submitted was for them to upgrade the parking calculations on the sheet, and you can see that even with the most intense use, they only required an additional 6 spaces. But other than that, it really doesn't have that significant an impact. I will pretty much hand it back over to the board at that point.
Okay, thank you. And Mike from DPW, your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pretty much concur with what you've heard. They're basically just, the building's expanding a little bit, but it's taking the area from the pavement, so there's really no net change.
So it's basically a wash between the asphalt and the roof.
Yep, and as to Gary's point too, the aisles got a little bit narrow, but they're still wider than what's required, so I don't think there's an issue there either.
Just make sure you're comfortable with it, okay?
Yes.
Any questions from the board? If anybody has any?
That'd be good.
Okay. I guess it speaks that, I guess we'll accept the field changes for, Washington Street, the flex space. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next item would be endorsement for 830 Upper Union Street for site.
839.
Excuse me?
839.
Oh, I'm sorry, 839 Upper Union Street. If I could go to Amy for a quick run through and.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so the planning board approved the site plan for 839 Upper Union Street on June 27th, 2022. They've added the certificate of vote to the plans, which is a requirement of the board. So I didn't see any issues for it to be endorsed.
Anybody have any questions, comment? Make a motion to endorse 839 Upper Union Street, final site plan.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll open up a new hearing, which would be for 115 Constitution Boulevard, which would be a site plan. Anyone can approach, introduce yourselves, please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing.
Second, waiving of the reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Doug Hartnett, Principal with High Point Engineering. Joining me this evening is the applicant's representative, Mike LePage, who's Facilities Manager for Plancy. Also with me this evening is Chris McCarthy, Landscape Designer with my firm at High Point, and Daniel Riggs from Embark Design, our architect for the project. We're here this evening for a couple of items seeking approval from the Planning Board. The first and foremost is for site plan review for the construction of a 8,920 square foot building addition to accommodate expansion of the office and administrative functions within the building. The second items regard two waivers. The first waiver has to do with the reduction of parking below what the zoning requirement is for 189 spaces to a proposed parking supply of 151. The reasoning for the waiver request is after an evaluation of the employee head count by the facilities manager, it's been determined that constructing parking to comply with zoning is really not necessary given the current use and the anticipated use of the facility post-construction. And the second waiver we're requesting is essentially maintaining the 9-foot by 18-foot parking stalls dimensioning that's currently out at the site today. That was built when this site was first constructed in 1995, 1996. Historically, the project was designed and approved by the building department, and we presume by the planning board in 1995 for the original building. That's what the drawing you see up here, if I put the planning board's attention to this. This is the original permit drawing. This was for a 60,000 square foot essentially research, development, and manufacturing facility for Plancy's parent company at the time, and then Plancy has been the tenant since 1996, right, Mike? That approved plan proposed 60,000 square foot main building, a 50,000 square foot addition, proposed parking, and then also provisions for expanded parking. Currently today, the site is 8 acres. You can see the existing conditions survey prepared by Garrier and Howland. The 60,000 square foot building was constructed as originally permitted. The parking was generally constructed as originally permitted as well. And the proposed plan for this project occurs within the front of the site. The proposal includes, as I said before, the construction of an 8,920 square foot 2-story addition located essentially in this part of the building here, called the northwest quadrant of the footprint of the building. That includes reconfiguration of existing space and new space to provide better office administrative functions to support the entire facility. And in order to accommodate the building addition, which does extend out slightly beyond the footprint of the building to the front and to the side, it was required to adjust the curb lines of the existing parking, both north, the plan north is north, and plan west as well. Included with that adjustment of the curb lines was to really clean up the entire edge condition as you arrive at the site. So when you come into the site post-construction, you'll have a very good-looking new architectural facade at the main entrance of the building. You'll have new plantings, new hardscape that provide basically a desired edge around both the north and the west. In addition to the landscape and hardscape improvements in the building addition, we're providing 8 electric vehicle charging stations. That amounts to about 5% of the parking count. That's pretty typical for commercial development targets for electric vehicles. As we said, the landscape and hardscape complements the new architecture, but more specifically, provides an element for employees to have a better experience and provide connectivity from both the interior break room, which is being reprogrammed in this west location of the building, and allow those employees to get outside to be able to enjoy an outdoor seating area. That seating area will be a mix of hardscape, pervious pavers, stamped concrete, typical sidewalk with plantings, and a shade structure that will promote shade, especially at this time of year, for seating out in that area. There's also a vegetative screen that's being proposed to create a separation from the parking and the employee outdoor area to the main loading element of the building. There'll be some additional stripe parking we're proposing in the back. This parking is somewhat inefficient today. There's a fair amount of asphalt here that is underutilized from a parking perspective. So again, instead of adding impervious area to create the parking that's required for the anticipated employee headcount, it was made more sense to provide just on-street, on-pavement striping within this area. And we've conducted maneuvering studies to demonstrate that meets the requirements for maneuvering for loading to the facility. The project results in a disturbance of about 35,000 square feet, less than an acre, and there's a net reduction in impervious of about 2,092 square feet through the introduction of the pervious pavers and the introduction of the asphalt edge and creating a little more green space where it did not exist previously. As we said in the opening statement, the reduction in parking is based on the employee head count. So what Plan C has done, and it's in the planning board's packets, is a head count both as to what they anticipate for both day shifts, night shifts, and visitors, and anticipated employee hirings, if you will. And I think there was 16 in the spreadsheet that Plan C had provided us to help support our petition for the waiver of parking. In addition to the parking, there's a small monument sign that will be located here that's required to really give an address, a formal address to the building. And that sign will be designed and constructed in conformance with the sign bylaw. And there will be some landscape, small shrub and flowering plant landscape elements to help make that look nice as you come into the building. This is the architectural elevation that gives the board a sense as to what the vision is for the entry for the building. To the left that you see in white, that's really the manufacturing space. That's a high bay space, one single floor. And the addition that you see, you can see the two-story with the glass element in the front. And then the main entrance, this is the entry here with a clear story vestibule that supports the vertical circulation of staircase and elevator to get you to the second floor office space. That's the proposal. At this point, we understand that in working with Amy that we are obligated to file for design review, and so we'll be making that filing this week to the Design Review Board. We expect to have a hearing with them the second week in August. And with that, happy to entertain any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you. So go to Mike from the DPW. Mike, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we did review the plan, and as it was presented, it's basically just some upgrades to the entrance, the parking around the entrance of the building itself. There is a net reduction in impervious area with the introduction of the pervious pavers, which is supposed to be the sidewalk and courtyard areas, and not being used for the pavement itself, which we agree with that approach. While it is less than an acre, it'd be considered a redevelopment project, but it doesn't, because it's less than an acre, it doesn't trigger the local stormwater bylaw. But they are proposing to do some retrofit modifications to the other existing catch basins on site, adding hoods to those catch basins, which will provide some benefit. So we really didn't have any significant comments.
Amy, do you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our town engineers reviewed it. Fire has also submitted a letter. They don't have any issues. Just to note that we did not ask Beta to review it because there really wasn't enough stormwater changes, involvement. It's more of a minor set project. Mr. Hartnett touched on the 2 waivers that I think I noted in my memo, as well as they'll be filing with the Design Review Commission. So I think if the board chooses to vote it tonight, that could be a condition, or if they choose to continue, it could be something design review prior to endorsement if they wanted to move forward with it.
Anybody have any questions or comments from the board? Jen, go ahead.
Of course. I just wanted to say, well, I guess one question is with the reduced parking. I mean, you guys have been a tenant for quite a long time, and a question to my fellow board members, you know, if the building were to ever change hands, then do we foresee the number of parking spaces being an issue? Otherwise, I am happy to see a reduction in impervious area, and happy to see, you know, electric vehicle charging stations. I think all of that was really thoughtful. So thank you for that. That's all.
Okay. That was one of my comments. In case you ever sell, you're dropping, what, 48 parking spaces or thereabouts? Now, is this, once COVID gets back and it's gone, what's that do to you? This is based on today's numbers. What about 2 years from now? When you're back up and running and you're gonna put more people in the building, you have sufficient parking?
Yes, yeah, we're anticipating the max about 146.
That doesn't leave much for spare. That's all. I just wanna make sure you have enough when things get back rolling again. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Rick?
No, I'm good.
Jake, all set?
I do have
Okay.
a couple questions just to follow up
Sure.
on that. Your
Yeah.
manufacturing, is that what you do at your facility? So I'm sure during COVID you've been operating with your staff in the building and
Yes.
aware of your numbers.
Yep.
So, okay. Through the chair for Amy, design review, are they going for their signage only? Because if they're industrial, do they actually need to go for a review of anything under industrial use, or is it just for their signage?
I'm being told by design review they will go for the facade.
Really?
Yeah.
Pretty substantial.
It doesn't,
Yeah.
under the bylaw, it doesn't seem like they need to go. Not that I'm trying
They
to make
haven't-
them not go, but I'm just.
Right. I don't see any issues with that,
Because it
but
doesn't say they need to go, so.
that's, you don't think they need to go?
No.
When I asked that question, I was
Yeah, it
told
says
that they
uses
needed-
in industrial are for buses and railroad stations or conference centers, so I wasn't aware that they needed to go, but that's another question. That's fine. Signage definitely, it would,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if they're changing any
I don't know what other
signage.
people think.
You might
but-
on the building?
There will
Change
be-
any
there will
signage on the
be-
building?
There'll be a
Signage on the
building mounted sign,
building?
as you said,
Okay.
the
Well,
architectural.
it's already there.
Oh, that sign is already.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, the one, and the one with Plaza, you'll be adding that Plaza vertical.
So to Mike's point, there will be a building mounted sign. It will be this, the vertical sign. And we will be upgrading the monument sign out front. But seems to me if that's gonna fall under the sign bylaw, that wouldn't preclude the planning board from making a determination this evening.
Yeah, I mean, I would understand signage, I'm just not sure they need to go for any
Yeah.
of the formal reviews that design review usually do. Maybe just confirm that. I'm sure you already confirmed it, but maybe, not sure.
I have a quick question to Mr. Hartnett. On the parking space dimensions, it says reduce parking space dimensions from 9 by 19 to 9 by 18.
Correct.
Correct. Amy, you have 9 by 18 to 9 by 18.
Are they existing 9 by 18?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason for keeping it is to keep, I want you to
I think
explain,
it's,
Mr. David, we're reconstructing this parking again to clean the entire edge up along the building. So go to 9 by 19, what it does is it affects, 9 by 20, excuse me, it affects the island, or we'd have to reduce the aisle width. So it has a cascading effect in terms of the dimensioning for the rest of the parking lot.
I'm fine with that. That's okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. So board's feel, you wanna wait for design review, or?
be a condition for prior to endorsement.
You know, I'd rather see design review square it away first, just continue it to 2 weeks if we can do that, but you don't want it.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that's necessary. I mean,
You think
it's a standard condition we've made on other plans for other people, and it seems fairly straightforward. I'm not sure how the rest of the board
Yeah, I
feels.
just wanna make sure we cross the T's, dot the I's. What do you guys feel? You okay with it?
Yeah,
Be a
Okay.
I'm
special
fine with that.
condition for endorse.
Okay,
Yeah, prior to endorsement,
Yeah.
okay, I'm fine with that, just wanna make sure.
I think they can.
So I make a motion to,
Do you want to vote on the waivers first?
yeah, you wanna do waivers first? And
I think so. It should be. Make a motion on a waiver, to approve a waiver of parking spaces from 189 to 151.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the other
What was the other one? In the current parking spaces.
one, make a motion to accept the waiver for parking spaces from 9 by 18 to replace existing spaces to keep the same size at 9 by 18.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the plan with the special condition that they need to file with design review prior to endorsement.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we close the hearing?
Go, make a motion to close the
Yep, then
public
make a
hearing.
motion- Yes, now make a motion to close the hearing.
Oh, wait,
Wait, anybody in the crowd? Or anybody on the,
that's that one up.
I just wanna look through first. I keep forgetting.
I know.
Go ahead. You good? We made a motion to close the hearing, all in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next line would be 175 East Central Street, Franklin Ford. They're looking to be continued. I think Amy said you want to continue to August 22nd is what they're looking for?
That's correct.
Okay, so I make a motion to continue Franklin Ford to August 22nd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then our next one would have been public hearing for 585 King Street, and they're looking for an extension to August 8th, I believe you said, Amy?
That's correct.
I make a motion to continue 585 King Street to August 8th. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we come to our last public meeting, which would be for Taj Estates, which is 230 East Central Street. And Amy, from Department of Planning, if you could give us a review, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just some of the comments that the planning board had made the last time that we actually had them in front of us was at the June 6th planning board meeting. There was a comment about along the alleyway to the side rear of the building where the windows, doors, egress would be located. They had asked for a letter from the structural engineer, which has provided an updated letter from the structural engineer. There's been discussion about affordable units. There was also concern about water runoff from the top of the wall, the wall structure proposed on Hill Ave. As far as some of these other waivers, I do want to note that Beta has submitted a list of suggested waivers for the board to review, more on the screening per 185-21 of the zoning bylaw. We have received, information on construction of the retaining wall, but I think it's been noted by myself and Beta about an existing plan. Are there current trees or roots that overlap the property lines that would need to be removed to install that wall? So I think there's disturbance on both east-west side of the plans in removal of any existing, whether there's stumps, rocks, whatever that might disturb, since they're looking to put it right on the property line, the wall. It's still suggested, in our opinion, to move the retaining wall 10 feet off the property. I do want to note that the applicant has offered 10% affordable units, but I do want to note that these will not go on our affordable housing list, and they will not be monitored by the town. The only way to accept it is the state law. It's not our law. It's not anyone else's law. It's filing under the affordable 40B thing. So it's just something that the state won't allow us to put on. Even if they deed restrict it or they do that, the state does not allow us to do that. So they won't be acknowledged or managed, which it's nice to have that. We did receive a public comment letter, so that is included. The building commissioner has also included a letter in this packet, so I want to make sure that's noted there as well. And I just, I know the board's been really concerned about the parking requirements. They do meet the exact minimum requirements. There's just no extra parking for visitors and stuff like that. So, thank you.
Thank you. I just go to Mike from DPW. Mike, if you can give us a rundown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This project we had reviewed before. They had addressed all our previous comments. I did have a chance to look through Beta's comment letter, and they had some remaining comments, and I'll defer to Gary in that, but I am in agreement with his comments on that one also. But I had nothing other outstanding on my previous comments.
Okay, good, thank you. So go to, Gary, I'll go to you first before we go to the applicant. You can give us your briefing of it.
Did you hear us?
Gary, you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Nope, sorry. I just thought if you could give us a rundown of your report here.
I pretty much, I agreed with Amy. She pretty much restated quite a few of the comments that we had relative to this site plan. There's still a few outstanding issues relative to the stormwater requirements in terms of the O&M, but they're pretty minor. The biggest issue we have is associated with that wall. The structural engineer pretty much even stated in the review, even of a memo that he sent along, that he's kind of concerned in terms of whether or not it's so tight to the property line that he's really concerned that it just can't, to have no spills coming from the drilling to fall outside the limits of the property line, it's going to be a difficult installation. And even when you look at the way that they're proposing it, they've got the wood planking going in behind these round columns, and I'm just not sure. You might get a little bit of sloughing off of the actual soil behind the wall. So it's going to be a difficult construction process associated with this wall. And as Amy stated, we still haven't seen any of the trees located along that property line to make the determination as to whether or not they're going to be impacted by the construction of this wall. Other than that, they've agreed to the issues associated with the waiver for the screening. And with that, I will hand it back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
I guess we'll go to the applicant and the attorney, if you want to introduce yourselves and give us a run-through, if you could, for everybody.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Cornetta, the attorney for the applicant, and Amanda Cavallari of Gary and Howland. She's going to start off with our presentation this evening.
Thank you. Good evening. So we just wanted to do a quick run through. We knew we did that at the last hearing, but just to keep everything kind of fresh and from where we started to where we're at now. You know, from our first submission, we've come, we've come quite far, and we've heard the boards, we've heard the residents. We've started off with a 41 one-bedroom unit building with 900 square feet of commercial space, 46 parking spaces. We were requesting a special permit for the mixed use within the commercial 1 district. We did require, or we were requesting a waiver for parking at that time. We had extended our parking within the sewer easement, which we've since pulled back. We've proposed grading within Hill Ave, and we didn't have an affordable component. And since that time, we've heard the board, we've heard the residents regarding parking concerns, building size, the affordability component, and the applicant has been amenable to the majority of the questions and concerns that have been raised. The project now is 31 one-bedroom units and 2 two-bedroom units, so 33 units in total, so a 20% reduction in residential units from where we started. We also did add a second commercial unit on the bottom floor, so now we'll have 2. This way they'll both be on the East Central Street facing side of the property. One would be used as a rental or a leasing office until all the units have been leased, and at that time it'll be then turned over, and a limited site plan for a change in use would be required as it would with the other one. We are still requiring a special permit for a mixed use within a commercial 1 district. However, we do not require, or we're not requesting a waiver for parking at this point. We are providing 52 parking spaces, which takes into consideration the 1.5 spaces per unit and 1 space per 500 square feet of commercial space. We've also reduced our building footprint by 8%. We've added parking underneath the building. The applicant has been, is amenable to adding a 10% affordability component, which would come down to 4 units. Out of the 32, or 33 rather, that would be up for the affordability component. They're also willing to contribute $5,000 towards a traffic signal study towards the town to be able to do that in the future and see if they can make any, headway on the traffic issues. One comment that was brought up at the last hearing by a resident between 230 and 240, where the daycare is currently residing, is that if a car was to go through that PVC fence, what would happen? So we've looked at the plans, and we've proposed steel posts instead of the wooden posts that are part of the PVC fencing, and they'd be strategically placed every 8 feet, and they would go in between the parking space along the fence line. So in the event that a car did accelerate, that it would hit a hidden bollard, so to speak, but it would be part of that fence. So in the event something like that would happen. And then we also did provide a traffic volume comparison by Vanass and Associates that looked at the different types of uses that could be proposed there. And based on the letter that was provided in your packet, the mixed use right now appears to be the best, the lower traffic volumes as opposed to warehousing or industrial development, medical office, coffee shops, or a fast food restaurant. And I believe that pretty much sums up a lot of our changes. We have also included in your packet questions on the architectural and color renderings of the project. So we did provide those along with the floor plan layouts that were requested for access and egress of the buildings. And we did provide elevation views, so you can see that it is a 3-story building, not 4, as last commented on. And it's within the height requirements for that zone. So, the building has gone in front of design review, for the colors and the textures, architectural renderings that, were proposed. So we have done that as well. We've provided the cross sections, so you can see the approximate heights of the abutting residences and rough distances between, the proposed use and the existing houses. We've done that on all of the different sides. You can see here that we do have the 3 floors and the non-habitable attic area, 40 feet to the top of the building, to the mean height of the main gable. And then we've also provided the floor plan for the proposed layout of the building, showing the commercial spaces up front, on the first floor, and then also the parking underneath. And I think that pretty much does it. I'll turn it over to Rich if he has anything else, or back to the board for any further questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, we're available for questions. I believe we have our traffic consultant, and we may have our structural engineer also on Zoom.
Okay. Right behind you.
Yep, Carlos is here.
I'm not sure everybody was aware, if we could hear from the traffic consultant, if he's on, just to kind of give a rundown just of what could have been there to what's proposed there for numbers for cars and whatnot. I know traffic was a concern. I have paperwork in front of me, but I'm not sure everyone else has it in front. I just want to make sure everybody hears what we're hearing.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Andrew Arsenault representing Vanasson Associates. Yeah, just to give a really quick rundown, we looked at a couple of different uses that will be available by rights. The residential development, the one proposed, is generally around 35 to 40 trips during the peak hours. The lowest one on the as of right is a medical office, and that would be around 45 to 60 peak hour trips. The other ones, the retail building, the coffee shop, and the fast food drive-through all have significantly more, about 100 in the peak hours, based on developing the site under those uses. If there's any specific questions, I can be available for any questions, but that's basically the gist of it.
Thank you. We'll go to the board if anybody has any questions or comments.
I have one through the chair. Amanda, on the so-called hidden bollards, which will be in the post of the vinyl fence, what's in between the 8 feet though? Little concern, is it between the,
So you have the slats, you have the fencing,
Right.
and then each of the panels is what, roughly 8 feet
Right.
or so?
give it
So-
to,
Yeah, so your spaces are 9 feet wide, so the posts would be in between the two. So it would be like a park, you would have a parking space, and then in the middle of the parking space, a bollard or a.
so the bollard is gonna be kind of
Kind of
set up in the middle of where a car would be parked?
Yes,
So you'll offset the post to the parking space,
Yes.
basically.
Okay.
and
Yep.
that'll be by the design and layout during construction.
Okay, I'm good with that.
2 or 3 inch posts, they'll be posted or something,
Yeah.
I would assume. Okay.
Through the
Yeah,
chair.
go ahead, Jess.
The 10% affordable units, what is that, how is that being defined exactly? And how would that be monitored or followed through on?
That's a good question. I know our application just said, we were just kind of raising the issue for the board. But we would be looking for some counsel from the board. We would be willing to do a deed restriction or an agreement with the board. We recognize Amy's comment that unfortunately the units wouldn't be counted against or for the Franklin Affordable Housing stock. That's unfortunate for all of us, but I think the ethical objective is still there to provide the housing. And whether we use the Franklin Housing Authority, whether you someone local, Maxine here in town could monitor it. Or, you know, we're open to suggestions, but I think the intent is to provide the affordable units, the 4 affordable units, and they would be defined by 80% AMI. So they would be affordable. You know, I don't think they're extremely, I'm not an expert, but extremely low. I think it's the minimum or the maximum, whichever your approach. But yeah, there would be that intent, and we certainly would have no objection to it being in the decision, which would be recorded, as well as entering some kind of an agreement with the town. I could certainly, we could explore that with Attorney Sorrell as to what their preference is, but I think the willingness is there, and that's the important thing.
Yep. Okay.
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
The unit on Plan West that is just north of the parking, based on the exterior elevations, it looks like that, no, stay on that page. The furthest south, that guy, yep. Based on the exterior elevations and the sort of line of the retaining wall beyond it, it looks like that unit is mostly underneath the height, because where the elevation is, I assume then there's 2 windows for that unit from balcony, and then 2 windows. When you look at the exterior elevation, it appears as though it's essentially looking at the alleyway, like it's in the alleyway. So I guess my question is that the intent that that unit in particular is looking at an alleyway? I mean, I guess that is ultimately up to the owner and the experience that you're giving your tenants, but that was something I noted on the exterior elevation, that it just doesn't seem like a great unit for someone to live in, staring at a retaining wall. I think once you get further north, Plan North, it resolves itself, but that one unit in particular seems to be an issue. That's all I have now.
Jay? No? No?
Just a couple questions, comments. I understand the intent of your traffic volume comparisons, but just to point out, a coffee shop with a drive-through and a fast food restaurant with a drive-through aren't as of right. You need a special permit to do those. So just pointing that out. You know, we've gone through a lot of these discussions and issues, multiple hearings now, so I'm not going to try to repeat questions. I just, when you guys were looking at this, I don't know if this question's ever been answered fully. Was there any discussion about making the size of the building smaller, down to 20 to 22 units, and why that was not a consideration?
You're asking us?
Yeah.
I think everything was on the table when we were designing the project. I think the development team took all of the comments that were made, and the reason for the number of units that are being presented, I think, is a financial one.
Okay.
As we've responded in the past.
And then, let's see, as far as the 2 commercial spaces that you have now, you're still noting as one of them is going to be a leasing office until the units are, utilized and you can go back to being a commercial use. I guess my question is, in our zoning bylaws, is a leasing office actually something that's permitted on the first floor of a multi-level building in the commercial 1 zone? I don't think it is. That's my opinion. I guess that's something for our zoning enforcement agent, the building commissioner, to determine. I guess my question to you guys is, could you utilize one of your units as a model unit to be utilized as a leasing office on one of the other floors, and utilize these 2 spaces as true commercial spaces, a point that's been made previously in another meeting? I mean, I don't see why you can't do that. Why does it have to be a leasing office? It really shouldn't be.
Okay.
That's just my point. That's all I have. We've gone over everything else
Good.
multiple times.
Okay. Anybody on Zoom? Question, comment? No? Don't see anybody raising their hand. Anybody from the audience? I know there was one person that wanted to speak. Yeah, if you want to approach the mic and introduce yourself, name and address.
My name is Jennifer Lawrence. I live at 216 East Central. I'm the abutter on the east side, I guess. I want to address the wall. They're proposing installing it 6 inches from the property line. I have photos that I would like you guys to look at where this proposed wall is going to be, if I may. But there's also pictures of the ledge of my backyard and how close the ledge is in relation to my foundation. One of the photos is the ledge outside of my dining room window that is connected to this entire mountain of ledge that spills onto Hill Ave, and particularly to that first photo that I submitted. There's a large tree growing out of the property line. There's no way, and there's test pits have yet to be done in that particular location. There's no way there's no ledge there. And the second photo I took is, if you can see the rotted tree on the ground, it's opposite the stump, that huge stump that's there. That photo is showing the grading of the ledge that comes down onto Hill Ave and then drops down where that stump is. That line is a chain link fence that didn't really transfer through on the photo, but that is a chain link fence and a property line flag that runs right between the roots of that tree. There's no way that that drilling or blasting is not going to compromise the integrity of the ledge close to my home. I don't want to be sitting in my dining room one day and that rock breaks off and rolls through my dining room while my family's eating or whatever. The test pits were supposedly done in May. They are like 30 feet away. So I would like to formally invite any of you to come view the site, my backyard. You're welcome to come see it in person so that you can get a better idea of really what is being proposed here. It's 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. This project is not for this site. I am not against anything going there. I welcome it. Who wants to look at an abandoned house all the time? Something needs to go there. This just isn't it. I'm sorry.
Did you want to respond just how you're gonna build the wall so you don't interfere with this woman's lot line? And you're not gonna blast from what I gather, right?
They don't know, they didn't do the test pits yet.
Yes, my name is Carlos
Introduce yourself
Ferreira.
first, please.
Yeah, my name is Carlos Ferreira from MF Engineering. Yes, we went to the site and we excavated along the highest points of the wall, which is approximately station. Can't read this thing. It's between the station 100 and here, right? We excavated in 3 locations on the high point of the wall. We went 10 feet down. The material on site is all glacial till. We didn't encounter on the locations that we dug. We have pictures of that. We went 10 feet in depth, which will be like the bottom of the grade that we were proposing to do the wall. The drilling of, I talked to like a company that does like these walls like in multiple locations, helical drilling. They've been in business like for 60 years. And they recommended to me, like, Carlos, this is the way we're gonna do like this. We're gonna use like I was proposing initially a 12-inch a soldier pile beam. So they recommended to me we can use like a 9-inch circular pile for it.
The excavation will be done by hand. I mean, this thing is not like, we're not gonna have like huge machines or anything over there. So they're gonna do like, and then we're gonna install like the wood boards on it. And then the wood boards are gonna be like the formwork for the shotcrete that's gonna go in front of the wall. So nothing happens on the back of the wall. And so you're gonna excavate this into like 2 feet increments on it, install the wood boards. And then after the whole wall is done with the wood lagging, then we're gonna install like the shotcrete, and that's gonna be the permanent surface of the wall. You know, I'm not saying that, I mean, I don't see like the plans with like the trees located the way that she's saying on it, but there's minimal impact to the excavation using like this method. This is done most commonly in the city where you're actually digging against the sidewalk. So I mean, this thing is, you know, you don't see this a lot like in Franklin because it's not like a proposition for like, it's an expensive proposition in something that is done in sites in the city.
Okay, good, thank you. Anybody else?
Can I respond to that?
Yep, come up
The
and,
reason that
come
road was
up to the
never-
mic, please.
I believe the reason that road was never developed into Hill Ave to go straight through is because it is all ledge, and there would require blasting to make that a road. That tree that is coming out of that property line, what happens when they rip that out? It's just all gonna fall. And their test pits were done so far away from that location, they have no idea what kind of ledge is there. That ledge spills out into Hill Ave and then onto 230 East
I
Central.
think Hill Ave was originally just a paper road.
It was a
For
paper
future-
road.
For
And
future
it was
access.
never developed because it is all ledge.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Kobe, you have your hand up?
Sure, yeah, I had a few comments. Thank you. This is Kobe Frangillo, 140 Maple. I can't speak at all to those engineering concerns, and I'm glad you guys have the minds to. I did just want to talk, and I'll keep my comments briefer than originally intended, but I just want to remind, change is scary. Change is always going to be scary. The way that we have developed as a town, similar to every other town, is we have built up a backlog of expenses, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars backlog of expenses. The only way that we can afford to keep the town that we love is to allow for some growth. And the question then becomes where and how that growth comes. And I think that if we want to do it in a way that minimizes neighborhood impacts across the town, then we want that growth to be in our commercial corridors. We want it to be near the center of town. We want it to be near the commuter rail. We want it to be mixed use. We want it to have street frontage. We want it to be less car-centric, a little less wasted impervious coverage. We want it to be consistent with a design. We want it to be affordable at different price points so that our kids can afford to live in Franklin still, that our grandparents can afford to live in Franklin still. I think that this project meets a lot of that. And again, I can't speak to the design piece or the engineering piece, but it seems to meet a lot of the type of growth that we want to allow a little more. The only place that it doesn't is the amount of parking that we've mandated, which, again, I'll express my frustrations with our short-sighting this on making them build so much parking. If you build it, they'll come. They have to be the ones to sell the units. I don't know why we continue to wade into trying to anticipate their clientele that they have to buy. I am looking for spaces that don't mandate car ownership. We have a commuter rail We have Gatra. I ride my e-bike around. Occasionally carpool or Uber. You can do quite a bit downtown. So frustrations with parking, but every other concern seems to be what they're trying to meet. So if we can get the engineering and design to work, it seems like a project that we might want in the future of Franklin. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Anybody else have any question or comment? If you want to just approach the mic, please give your name and address.
My name is Michael Glennon, and I live on Hill Avenue. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the neighborhood. I appreciate some of these concerns being addressed, but I would like to bring to your attention several areas of additional concern that in some respects have been mentioned previously, but also a lot of new concerns. There are concerns that we've spoken about on previous meetings, most recently the June 6th meeting, but they've still have been failed to be rectified or even addressed. So during the June 6th meeting, a resident asked the committee a few questions regarding the traffic impact assessment, further the TIA. The questions that were presented by this resident were, was the traffic report available to the public? Mr. Rondo, you said yes. Did the traffic assessment include Lewis Street, Hill Ave, Crocker, Uncas Ave, Keogh Street as part of the traffic study? Mr. Rondo, you said yes. You also, for further, asked Mr. James with Beta to follow up and confirm. So I'll pause there. Mr. James, has that been confirmed? Because that was an action item for last meeting.
You have the traffic consultant who did the design, if he's still on. Is he still on? Yes. If he can respond. And give,
sure.
give him a rundown on how you approach a project in the outer bounds of part of your traffic design.
Sure. So how we basically look at, we start at the project site and we work out from there. A good rule of thumb is anywhere that there's going to be a 5% or greater increase in traffic throughout the day. Our study area included Route 140 at King Street and Chestnut Street, Route 140 at the Horace Mann Plaza driveway and the CVS driveway, and Route 140 at 230 East Central Street. External to that, all of our impacts were lower than the 5% threshold, and that's defined by the Mass Department of Transportation for what their limit is, what they look for when they start defining what a study area should be. As far as if the study was made available to the public, I can't really speak to that.
Yeah, it was part of your package.
I can't. Yeah, I mean, we submitted it to the town.
Yes, it was part of the package.
It was part of the filing package.
Correct.
All right, so we were told that it did include Hill Ave, Lewis Street, Uncas, Crocker, and Keogh at the last meeting on June 6th. And I'm assuming everybody had the opportunity to review the traffic assessment. Okay. Well, with that being the case, there's a 175-page document. We had the opportunity to review it. I'd much rather be doing a lot of other things than reviewing a 175-page traffic study. However, there was not one single mention of Hill Ave, of Lewis Street, of Crocker, of Uncas, or Keogh in the 175-page document. Based off the existing traffic study that was released, there is a large disparity, which is on slide 13 of your traffic assessment, that I want to bring to the attention. There are a total of 105 cars in the 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. window that are unaccounted for in the traffic study. With that being said, I will pause there to pass this along to show you what I am saying is the 105 cars, so you can see that. Because, and you can pass this around, it fails to mention Lewis Street, Keogh, Hill Ave there, where you can see the cars start on one end and they don't even make it to the other side. Well, where are these cars going? Well, they're going down Lewis Street, I've said it before, they're going on Lewis Street, they're going up Crocker, they're going up Uncas, and they're beating the intersection to get up to King Street and get onto 495. They're also coming off Summer Street, they're coming down Crocker, they're exiting Lewis to get back onto 140 to beat that intersection. It's a daily occurrence, and that is 105 missing cars for just 1 hour of the day. Okay? There are 22 children. I actually take back my last statement when I spoke on June 6th. I said 16. I will revise that to 22 children under the age of 12 in that neighborhood. To have an extra 105 cars passing through the neighborhood that don't live in that area in just 1 single hour is a major safety concern. With the continuing building in this area, with the development in this project, with how difficult it will be to turn left out of this 230 Central Street project, will only force more cars through our neighborhood. There have been numerous incidents, the most recent one last week in which we did have the police come to our house to address it, of cars speeding and racing up and down the street. A child, a 10-year-old child was almost hit by a car the other day. We have an incident that I would love to have brought a PowerPoint and show you a video, but I will send that to the committee here, and we just ask that they follow up on this, of somebody on a bike that was on my driveway camera within inches of being struck by a car with a Rhode Island license plate cutting through. There have been all these incidents coming through just to beat the intersection at King and 140. My question is would the residents of Royal Court, Newell Drive, George Road, Ashley Circle want an additional 100+ cars aggressively driving through the neighborhood every hour of every day? Gonna probably guess no. The last meeting you asked us to notify the police to address our safety concerns. We've called the police over 7 times for legit safety concerns since June 6th. They've been fantastic, by the way, but they've come 7 times since June 6th. They informed us that there is very little that they can do. But more importantly, we actually need to address the issue with you, that you are the one that can actually drive change and address our safety concerns, not the police. There are members of this board that have been pretty cavalier regarding the impact that this project will have on the Lewis Street neighborhood. I understand the argument that they're saying for development of this town. Once again, I am for development of this town. Like Jen, not this project. It proposes a major safety concern. Mr. Power, you even went as far as last meeting said you don't want a building in your backyard either. For years, there has been building in our backyard where infrastructure is already maxed out and can no longer support it. Mr. Cornetta, you stated that this project is very pedestrian friendly. It is not. If a resident of this building wants to walk out and go to Honeydew Donuts, which is across the street for coffee, they have to take a left, walk all the way down to DeVita's Market, where this is the closest crosswalk. They have to then cross, and they have to walk all the way back for a building that is directly across from them. I guarantee you it will be very quickly before one of them just says, this is not worth the walk, and people just dash out right across the street. This is an intersection that has had fatal accidents in the past. We all know that this will just run, they'll all just run directly across the street, just increasing the chances for just another serious or another fatal accident in this area. There's also a school bus stop at the end of Lewis. The end of Lewis Street, there's a school bus stop. There is no crosswalk there. It is a very dangerous intersection for children to be by at the buses with people aggressively driving and no crosswalk. The traffic study that was conducted was conducted in the morning time when school was already in session. So it was conducted during a time that did not take into account the safety concerns of children boarding and deboarding buses. Again, Mr. Canetta, you said the last meeting there is not a significant impact to the traffic system. This is once again false because the traffic impact study, as just mentioned, failed to include Lewis Street, Hill Ave, Keogh, Crocker, and Uncas, which will create a significant traffic issue. Also failed to mention how many cars cut through, the traffic study also failed to mention how many cars cut through the Horace Mann Plaza. On that paper that I just passed around, fails to mention Lewis Street, King, because of all those 105 cars that are missing. But if you look at the other way, there's also a disparity of how many cars are cutting through, like many people do, the Shaw's parking lot to get onto Chestnut Street. Mr. Canetta himself stated on the June 6th meeting that this project is pushing the limits for density in this area. Keep in mind that the project by Big Y and Chestnut Street and the assisted living on Chestnut Street isn't even completed or occupied yet. Maybe independent of themselves, they will have minimal impact, but together they will have drastic impact that can, once these are approved, they cannot be undone. In speaking with members of the neighborhood and other residents of Franklin, we would like to request that the town install a block the box at the end of Lewis Street, multiple stop signs on Lewis Street, Cook Street, Keogh Street, Hill Ave, sidewalks that are lacking between King Street and CVS, which is a critical step for those apartments that are going in by Big Y right there. Finally, I'd like to recommend a new traffic study be conducted that includes a safety analysis by a different company other than Vaness, specifically once the apartments by Big Y are completed and occupied. There's been 3 revisions to this traffic study. Not once has the actual traffic been mentioned on Lewis Street, King Street, Hill Ave, Uncas, and Crocker. There's over 105 cars in 1 hour unaccounted for. So I think it would be fair to ask for an independent traffic study to be done that reviews actual safety concerns. This safety study should include future crash and severity rates and determine if improvements are necessary for current projects. Most recently, the reviews have been sent out as far as July 8th, and this is the 3rd time that they failed to mention our neighborhood. The current traffic study that was conducted indicated back in 2020 that the intersection on several times of the day received a grade of E/F. I don't know about you guys, but E's and F don't get degrees. All right. So we would like to request that the new study include the Lewis Street neighborhood and the Horace Mann Plaza. In failing to do so, failing to conduct a new traffic study that includes that addresses our safety concerns, is directly showing us that you are not taking the safety of your residents and the children of this neighborhood and this town seriously. Safety should be a primary function of the town of Franklin, which includes providing and maintaining the town's infrastructure and identifying and existing future safety studies.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Vanessa Associates, just to reiterate how you do your traffic studies and why Lewis Street wasn't picked up, because it falls under percentages, but you can describe to these people the reason it was accounted for, but it's not numbers.
I'll let him speak. I just want to add though that 105, and I mentioned that 105 was above the 5%.
So I'd like to hear that, just so the residents hear it as well.
Sure. I'm not exactly sure where the 105 is. There are, we would not show the differences in the, due to side streets between the 2 intersections. I'm not sure if that's the 105 that he's referring to or not. But again, yeah, we just go down and we try to anticipate which intersections we would have a measurable impact at. After we do that, we kind of check it back with the 5% threshold to see if we got it right. If we didn't, we go out and we expand it further down the street. I can't really expand anymore. It wasn't within our thresholds to advance the study down there.
Okay, thank
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask for a clarification on that? So how did you come up with the threshold then? Did you do a physical count, or did you just estimate, or for that, for determining whether you included that side street or not, I guess is?
Sure. We look at the no build volumes and we subtract out the projected build volumes. So the project's specific impact, if that's going to kick it over 5% outside of those intersections.
Yeah, would be nice. Yeah, okay. You had a question, if you want to approach the mic, please. Kind of not repeat what was just run in front of us, if you could.
Hi, I'm Chris Michironi, and I live on Hill Ave also. They're saying that the study is based on, it was from what, March 5th, 2020. And the 107 apartments aren't even open yet. Not everything in there was open yet. The traffic that goes into Starbucks right now, there's a new restaurant that's being built, and then how many cars will be coming out of the new apartment complex.
That-
That's why we're asking
That was
for-
projected with this project as well, but go ahead. I'll let him respond, go ahead.
Okay. But
Sure.
again, I think the projection was through 2029, though, wasn't it? The projection was through 2029, not immediately right now, so. I
Correct.
Go ahead.
Correct. So how we come up with the 2029, we use a 7-year horizon from the opening year of the project. And that's comprised of two specific things. First off, we look at any specific projects that we know are going to happen. The ones you had mentioned, we have the mixed-use development, 340 East Central Street, and the Chestnut Senior Village. We get those volumes from the reports that are done from them, and we add them onto our traffic. On top of that, we look at anything that may come up within the next 7 years that no one would be aware of right now. We look at the historic traffic growth over the last 10 years, and we try to extrapolate that 10 years down the road, or 7 years down the road, I'm sorry. For this project, the general background traffic growth was, over the 10-year period, was around 0.5% per year. We rounded up to 1%. That's about the minimum that I would personally ever do for a growth rate. So we grew all of our traffic using that 1% per annum, compounded like interest over the 7 years, and then added the specific developments that we do know of to capture anything we know about, and that may come up down the road.
So my question is, that 1% that he's talking about, or 0.5%, was only based on this project, the 230, correct, or all of them?
All the roads, all the traffic on the roads today, we grow up by 1% compounded annually over the 7 years.
I still think that it's way too much volume, and we haven't seen what this is gonna do across the street.
They're the engineers, not us.
I-
We go by with what we're given as, from the professionals, so I can't speak anymore, unfortunately. So, you have a question? If you wanna approach the mic, please, yep. No, you're raising your hand. Give your name and address, please.
Mark Matroni with 87 Hill Avenue. These are just projections. I would invite the gentleman to sit on our pool deck during those times, and these are actual numbers. You can count. It's a car a minute that goes up and down Lewis Street, all right? And it's all, the result is people cutting through Shaw's to come beat the traffic. These are actual. I guess he has to go with projection, but this is actual. He can come and sit on our pool deck. I'll even give him a drink if he has to, but these are actual numbers, and not just sitting there. You know, I was looking at the projections where he said the 2029 numbers. That same intersection that passed through that diagram there, in 7 years, traffic, only because I can remember the number, coming from Rentham, the number of cars are only going to raise in 7 years, in that same time, 75 cars in one, really? It just doesn't make sense. I get he has to work with something and some kind of percentage or projection formula and everything, but we're just seeing it, all right? We're seeing it daily. It's a definite safety issue. There's, like they said, 100 cars in that hour, 105. And you can see, if you do the math on that diagram there, on the PM side, it shows a difference of 105 cars. But he can't prove where those 105 cars coming from, because he didn't have someone sit at the end of Lewis Street or Uncas Ave. He can't prove that. He's just going by that 5%. It's a 5% number. Well, that doesn't protect the kids. Those protect, you know, it's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. I know what else to tell you. I mean, he's an engineer. I'm not. I looked at his diagram. It doesn't add up. I'm telling you. In the morning, less volume. People come down through King Street, and because they have the right on red, they go there because it's path of least resistance. Look at the diagram I just gave you. Coming down Chestnut Street, the number of people that turn left onto 140. It's like 18 cars. Why is that? Right? Look at the total numbers. They're going through Shaw's to go to Rentham or wherever. They have to have an actual study done in the neighborhood. It's just, I don't know, it's frustrating because we see it, you don't. And this is, like I said, we said it, that's not open, the senior housing isn't open. Any one of these businesses can close tomorrow and someone can come in and put another development in and it's just gonna increase the volume again. So, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
Hopefully we hit home, but thank you.
Amanda, did you want to respond to anything, or Mr. Canada?
No, I think our presentation is complete, unless the board has any specific questions for us.
Anybody else? Well, oh,
Mark Ravani, my mother lives at 240 East Central Street, the direct east of Butter. First, I'd like to correct something I said last meeting. We talked how there was no commercial abutters who complained, and I was wrong because my mother's complained since day one as to the effects, the negative effects it would have to her business. Second, the bollards, they're gonna put steel posts every 8 feet. I don't know how that lines up in the middle of a car when they're 9-foot spaces. You guys have been adamant about putting bollards to protect people drinking beers and, you know, hanging out. These are little kids. The plans, I know they show the house is pretty far apart. They're less than a car length. It's a 9-foot space from the fence to my mother's house till you make contact with the house with a kid in the middle. Second, that 6-foot high fence, while we're talking about it, what stops something from coming over that fence and hitting a kid? It's 6 feet high. People can throw a lit cigarette. I mean, all the cars are right there, right? The thing would be to flip it over and get in your car. What stops somebody from shoveling their car off and throwing a shovel full of snow over and landing on a 6-month-old kid who has no idea that it's coming? The traffic report, if we're talking about all these people working, I'm not gonna spend too much time on the traffic report, but I think that the pedestrian crossing should be on there, at least. If we're gonna say that all these people are gonna walk to the train, we got 30 people walking to the train at 7 a.m., they all gotta cross the street. The traffic comparison. If you're telling me, you know, the donut shop had 1,200, if you're telling me 600 people go to Honeydew a day, you know, I mean, I'll go home right now. That you know that's crap. And I know that they're just using a book, but we're talking about real life in this town on that road. I mean, I could do a traffic comparison and say if we put 20 units, I have 200 trips. For 10 units, I get 100 trips. I mean, I can go the other way too and make it look good, you know? Parking, they got 2 commercial spaces and 2 spaces for that. Where do the people go who are coming to visit? Everybody has to walk to that building? I mean, or unless the person who's working there is walking there. I don't know. They need 50 spaces, they have 52. They need 50 for their units. I still don't understand how those little trees against the fence satisfy that code 185, I forget. 20 more cars need 1 tree and 40 square feet of dirt for each tree, bordered within 5 feet or containing. There's 28 spaces down that fence. I see a couple potted trees. They're like in, what, 10-gallon pots? That's not a tree. The snow storage in that parking lot is all buried behind parked cars. So what happens when it snows at night? Where are all those cars are gonna move out so they can plow? Where are all those cars going when they all pull out so that they can put the snow where it needs to go? Because they're all behind parking spaces, right? So I'm just curious, are they all sitting at the bank? At Honeydew, they filling up? I don't know where those people are going. The retaining wall. You're putting a 4-foot high chain link fence on top to stop people from accidentally falling over. Any little kid that lives in that neighborhood could easily climb that fence and drop down 10 feet, right? I'm not saying people should watch their kids, and I'm not saying things like that, but if you go to a baseball field, there's 100 little kids climb over that 4-foot chain link fence on the outfield. It's a very simple thing to do. We've been through the test pits. What happens, so the test pits are allowed to be dug at the beginning of construction. What happens if they do hit ledge? Because, I mean, we can ask the DPW, right? The sewer easement is high because it goes over the ledge. That was talked about in the first meetings, right? We know it's there. It's not a question. right? So what happens if this is passed and they do hit ledge? What's the recourse for something like that?
Mike, you wanna respond?
All I can say is that easement that goes along the back of the property there is a manhole within the easement, and the sewer line's about 10 feet down, just under 10 feet below from the rim to invert, it's about 10 foot.
Well,
There may be some ledge. Pipe is pretty low.
I'm not an engineer. I just, from what was said in the meetings prior, I know that the guy who lives right on the corner of Ledge Street and Hill Ave has a rock that comes 4 feet up high in his basement, almost touches the floor joist. So, I mean, it's there. I'm
That's
just
why it's called
wondering,
Ledge
I mean, huh?
That's why it's called Ledge Street.
I agree 100%, 100%. I mean, I've tried to dig up there with a shovel as a kid. You can't not hit it. I'm wondering, I mean, then what do? Do we say, well, you hit it, we already gave you a permit, so go ahead and blast? I mean, what happens?
No, they'll have to come up with a means and methods when they do the construction, sit down with the DPW and Beta.
But, so
they've already done the test pits, based on the structural engineer who's sitting in front of you.
Well, they didn't dig it near the wall.
He dug it enough to evaluate what he needs.
If you can show me a tooth mark in the hill, I'll go home right now.
So I'm just going by what they're saying.
Okay, well, I go to that house every day.
It's not truthful.
Also, this building's 50 feet high by his plans. I know it says 40 feet to the mean height of the gable. I mean, even if that's a 6-pitch roof, that building's 69 feet high. You know what I mean? That makes it a 49 feet plus the meat on the rafter or truss, whatever he's using. That's 50 feet high. My mother's house is 9 feet away from a 50-foot high building. You can't tell me that thing's not gonna block out the light. I mean, I know on the plan they put about, 45, 50 feet between the two houses, but in reality,
It's within zoning requirements, which is outside our boundaries, that's
thought it was
town
40 feet
council.
without a spec.
40 feet to the midline. That's what the dictates the law for that zone. 40 feet to the
Okay.
midline of the roof. Okay, anybody else?
Yep. Craig Ronnie, 10 Barrington Street. While on the fence, being a PVC fence, I'm kind of curious why you said it was okay to put a PVC fence, put the steel piping in, when a few meetings ago, it was brought up by board members that these PVC fences constantly fail.
The posts themselves inside
No.
are breaking.
I'm talking, I go by the one Starbucks every day on Old West Central, that just completely fallen apart and into the neighbor's house. That was brought up meetings ago, and nothing's been done about that
That's
either.
because they didn't have the metal posts inside as well.
Oh, so,
So
you
at
have an
least
answer
they-
for everything, don't you? Just say yes
That's what
now,
I'm-
and be done with it.
Okay. Any other comment?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody from the board? Okay.
Ethics charges.
Make a motion to close the hearing for 230 East Central Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more time?
So will there be any follow-up on the safety concerns for the?
No, we closed the public hearing, so there's no more additional information that will be
So
added
we
to
just
the.
forget about the kids?
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Alright, that's it, cool. That makes things very clear what your stance is. So just asking you all straight up to your faces, like if one of our kids get hurt, like you guys are all okay with
It doesn't matter.
because you just ignore that. So if my 2-year-old son with autism gets hit by a car,
They don't care.
you guys are okay with that?
They don't care.
You can't answer. That's.
The only thing we could recommend is call the police department. We know you've done it, just,
It's to you guys, it's to you, okay? I have a child with special needs and I brought up serious safety concerns. And no one is addressing it. That is extremely unethical,
they've met them.
extremely unethical.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Hey, Amy.
Recording. And this is where Robert Harlan's role became important, because
the black community was politically important to the Republican Party. You know, in Ohio, which is where Robert Harlan was the most important African-American politician, that was the swing state. You know, the reason we had so many presidents in that era from Ohio is that you needed to win Ohio to win the presidency. And it was a competitive state politically. And the black vote was a crucial difference maker for the Republican Party. So here you have the leading black politician in the most important state come to Washington to say, look, I grew up alongside this man. I was in the same house.